It's 7:30 on Tuesday, October 18th. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Finance to order. First item, as always, is public comment. Given that there's no one in the audience.
Oh, I'm going to time this for, I'm going to time this. Can we,
Okay.
stopwatch. Can you call to order again? Go. Go ahead, public comment.
Want to call it again?
No, go ahead.
Okay. First item on the agenda is public comment. There's no one in the audience, so no one in person. Jen, did we receive any emails?
We did not.
Okay. So first primary item on the agenda is going to be to review and close out certain of the reserve fund for capital non-recurring expenditures, the capital projects within that account. Jen circulated, you all should have a detail of the $231,000 of projects which are intended to be closed out. Jen, do you want to?
Yep, I do have one update to that because I was waiting to hear back from Park and Rec. We're going to add to the closeout list $5,000 from their tree replacement, fiscal 22 tree replacement appropriation. They had trees donated, so they didn't spend the funds. So it'll be a total of $236,723.85 that we close out. The projects that we looked at were everything fiscal year 22 and earlier. The projects to remain active, you see the explanation on them. I thought most of them were legitimate. Some of them were related to COVID delays, especially we're seeing that in the fire departments with SCBA gear. There was a new standard, and then there's COVID delays on top of that. So a lot of the equipment, radios, that sort of thing, those have been delayed, and that's prevented the departments from finishing up their purchases. The only other one that's been hanging around for a while is Norotan Fire Department, the replacement of the Apparatus bay floor. They are waiting to complete their natural gas conversion project, so then they don't have to cut through a brand new floor when they do that. So that one's on hold, but once they can complete the gas conversion, they'll move right into the floor replacement.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Mm-hmm.
On the Palmer project one, the traffic signal replacement?
Yep.
That project seems dead in the water. I mean, they've lost my understanding is they've lost their financing a couple of times. There's no indication it's going to go forward anytime that we can discern. So when something is like that, do we want to close it out and wait and see if they get the project back off the ground and put it back?
You could do that. You could close it to your reserve with kind of the understanding of if it becomes a viable project again off cycle from the budget, you could appropriate out of the reserve, or you could just say put it into a future budget.
Okay.
But was on that item, was that part of a match where we had to provide a certain amount to be able to do the study, and then WestCog was going to be paying?
No, I think this is for the actual signals. I think the ones that you're thinking of were there was the lot SIP for the intersection redesigns. Those we had a match on.
Okay.
But, before we close this one tonight, let me go back to DPW and just get some more information. We can always bring it in November.
Yeah,
and
I'm
close it
just
out.
asking more as a matter of sort of practice. And I have a couple others, things like the town hall pavement rehab. It just says hold due to asphalt costs. So when we have a project that looks like it, as far as I can tell from that comment, it may not go forward in the fiscal year for which it was approved. How do we treat those? Do we just carry them over to the following year, or?
I think it's kind of a case-by-case basis. With this particular one, this is what we're also seeing with the paving, where Ed decided to hold off. He wants to put it out to bid late winter, early spring, because the prices had gone up so much that he was only going to be able to do 80% of his planned paving or something. This would be under the same paving bid.
Okay.
So this is related to those asphalt prices, which he does expect to come down in the spring. I do think that if the project, just because it's not going to be done in the budget year, I think we should give it a little bit more time than that. This particular fund is meant to carry over from year to year, and I would hate to be closing them only to put them back in the budget.
Okay.
But, you know, we could do something like a little more scrutiny at 18 months. We didn't have anything really that was overly idle. The traffic signal one, it has been idle for a while, but a lot of them have had a little bit of movement, but for various outside circumstances, they're taking longer.
So my third one is one of my personal favorites, is the Edgerton property, because it says waiting to bid.
Yep.
So I'm not quite sure what that means as to when that's going to be, because if my recollection is correct, we're already 18 months on this one?
Yeah, this was a fiscal '22, we're coming up on 18 months. So this became effective 7/1/2021. I can check with Ed and find out when he expects to bid it, and then we can come back to you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just looking to see if there's going to be some movement on them, right? If there is, then fine, everything's good. I know that Ed gets to them when he can, right? It's not like.
Well, yeah, wasn't the Adjournment property, the 75, was that cleaning up some of the
Yeah,
Yeah,
work? Yeah.
but it hasn't started yet.
correct.
So does it make sense along-
They have gone and mowed and taken some concrete and stuff away, because I walk through there regularly, but the bulk of the work in terms of the grading and the tree removal and things that hasn't begun, no.
Does it make sense to look at this, and maybe we quarterly, to see, for example, so that we don't, so if we see 2 quarters, 3 quarters going by, and just, for example, on Edgerton and nothing's happening, to understand why nothing's happening and if any facts have changed, and whether we should reevaluate this rather than like we're here 18 months, and I know we've talked about it before, but, and I don't want to create work for you, but maybe we just have a list here, and if there's anything that doesn't seem to be moving forward for whatever set of reasons, that maybe we should talk about it.
I don't know, I think quarterly might be a little too frequent.
Okay.
We're government, we move a little slow sometimes. But we have implemented the practice of doing this again as you're going into the budget process, just to make sure that we capture as much as we can to put into reserve as you're making your budget decisions. So if you want more than twice a year, we can, but if you think twice a year works, we can continue with that.
Yeah. Maybe what we could do is, if we're going to continue doing it twice a year, some of these projects, if they're more than 12 months old, why don't you ask whatever department they're allocated to provide more than like a 3 or 4 word update, just in terms of what's going on with that project. And then we'll have enough information to decide, like, should we close it
Okay, we can do
or not?
that.
Is that fair?
Yeah,
A
that's
little bit
all.
more MD&A around
Yeah,
projects that are over 12
Exactly,
months
exactly.
since approval. And then, Jen, just one other thing I'm just thinking about on the sidewalk, for that new sidewalk installation. Every year, I think we do approximately $1 million worth of sidewalks between like new and or
Yep.
overhaul. On the new sidewalk, I think that shows like 2015 appropriation. I think what might be helpful is to just know how much of what we approve each year is getting done.
So
Because this seems like this is an account which it gets replenished each year, right?
no, we've stopped that. With fiscal '22, because we did the whole capital review. With the fiscal '22 budget, we stopped using the same account. So this really is old dollars. New money has not gone in here.
So these dollars up through and including 2021?
Yes.
Okay. So then, should there be like a new sidewalk installation to fiscal 2022 in here?
If
or
we had
23?
budgeted anything in RFCNRE, there would be, but we bonded $75,000 or something for new
Got
sidewalks.
it. Okay.
If it had been in here, it would have another new sidewalks with a 7/1/2021 date first funded.
Well then, like, are they drawing down this anymore, given it's
Yes,
now?
their last activity on that was September 22nd, 2022.
Okay. And like for that, are they just using these as part of the new for new projects, or are we still,
This is addressing plans that they had back when they requested the
Okay.
funds. Like, what we approved in the fiscal '23 budget was for a very specific, I can't think of where it was, but a very specific stretch that was gonna have new sidewalks. So Ed has a particular location in mind each time he requests the funds for new.
okay,
So what we'll do for the next round, when we're heading into the budget, is anything that has an appropriation or was appropriated more than 12 months ago, we'll have the departments provide more information. If it says, waiting to bid, when is it gonna go to bid? Reason for the delay, so that we know if it's gonna be an ongoing delay, or if it's a complete stoppage on a project, like the Palmer's project, something like that.
okay. And then under the Board of Education, the 325 we gave for the lockdown system,
Yep.
I see that that's actually at zero now, so will we just remove that from the list next year?
No, that's, they have an encumbrance, so they haven't actually completed it yet. They've contracted for the work and encumbered the funds, but they haven't completed it and fully invoiced it yet.
Is that in any way redundant with the new doors that will be coming our way from the Board of Ed?
I don't believe so, but I think that's definitely a good question to ask.
Okay.
Yeah. But we're sure the project's not done yet?
No, it is not done yet. This is directly from them that the project is still ongoing.
Because this was over 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And further to that, and it's probably not a question for you, Jen, is for them, is whether there can be any synergies if we have yet to spend this money.
In terms of the new stuff that
What's
they're doing on the
encumbered.
locks?
Yeah, in terms of that new stuff.
Whether it's the installation, the labor, whatever can be done all at the same time instead of repeating some of that.
Right.
Yep. So we should follow up with Rich Rudel on that.
I'll send him an email tonight on those. Okay.
There will also be some security enhancements to the entry vestibules for Henry Hamilton Royal, right?
But that's not part of what's coming.
No,
right?
that's not part of that separate allocation that was just approved.
Okay. Okay, so I guess, any questions on those that we're closing out here? And I will entertain a motion to close out 236,785, slightly more than.
723.85.
Oh. 236, 720.85. Okay, $236,723.85.
So moved.
David moved. Second. Rob seconded. All those in favor? And all these will be moved back into the capital reserve, right, Jen?
Yes. I'm sorry, who moved it?
Dave moved, Cardone seconded, and it's unanimous. Okay. The next item on our agenda is to review and approve our 2023 meeting calendar.
So everybody has a copy of this. It's pretty standard, for the most part, we're the third Tuesday of every month. What I wanted to call your attention to is our budget meetings. The charter requires that the Board of Ed and Board of Selectmen turn over their budgets to the Board of Finance on the first Tuesday in March, which this year is as late as it can be, which is March 7th. Again, the charter requires that you do a public hearing on the second Tuesday in March, which is March 14th. And then the charter requires that we have to file the budget with the town clerk by the third Tuesday in April, which is April 18th. School vacation is April 10th to the 14th, the week before that. So what this schedule has is a very compressed 1 month of budget meetings to get you done and voted on the budget before the school break, because we don't have any time afterwards that would allow us to meet the town clerk filing requirement. So there's a series of Tuesdays and Thursdays for the last 2 weeks, end of March, beginning of April.
So if we had a weather issue, we could move it to that 17th, which is that Monday, if we had to, right?
Yeah, as
Or
an absolute,
Or Tuesday, which would be the absolute last date, right?
no, because I have to file it
Oh,
with the
file it.
town clerk, so it has to be during their business hours.
Okay.
Yeah, the absolute drop dead would be Monday the 17th, but if we can avoid that, that would be best.
Okay. Well, listen, although, you know, we're not technically going to receive the budgets until March 7th. Like, the Board of Ed is scheduled to vote on theirs on February 14th. So I think, you know, once they vote on it, you know, we'll actually get it, even though it won't technically be officially handed over. So we should just,
When is their calendar available?
they went over theirs on Tuesday night. I brought a copy of this, you know, all of their meeting schedule, so I can layer that.
Like you did last year.
Yeah, we'll layer that into here. But yeah, the important dates are, you know, they plan to present the budget on January 5th.
It's the Saturday session? Or that's a Board of Ed meeting? Sorry.
You know, check. Yeah, January 5th is a Thursday. Is when they would, and then January 7th is the all-day.
January
meeting.
7th
Yeah.
is the Saturday session. Okay, thanks.
Hey Jen, when do we usually release the intertwined, I guess I'll call it budget, where it's Board of Education, our own breakout sessions, and then this and all in one Excel spreadsheet? Unless you did it, Jim, last time.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did. So what I'll do is I'll take in, or we can take and integrate into this the RTM budget, the RTM meetings.
Yeah, they won't be setting all of their meetings until the end of November, once they have their elections and all their committees set.
And a request, when we set the budget calendar, can we match the title of our assignments with the
Yes.
literal name of the department that's in the budget file? There's no, the budget book, or really on
Yeah.
On OpenGov.
On OpenGov. So there's no confusion about
Yeah.
which departments we're each looking at. Because I think there was a little bit of that last year.
We'll do that, and we'll have like the dollar amounts, I think, just to show that it all that everything is segregated into the different ones.
Thank you.
I think you actually put it in the budget file. You put the names next to.
I think we did. I think we had some kind of a crosswalk, but we'll make sure everything matches up.
Okay.
We'll have the names and the dollar amount, it'll be great.
It'd be just like a budget.
Thanks, Jen.
That's right, that's right. Let us, get back to us if you need us for anything.
Okay, any other questions on the proposed budget? Oh, sorry, the proposed calendar. So the one thing I will note, and I can talk to Duke and Allen about this, is January 17th, that Tuesday, we're scheduled to have a regular meeting, and they have, you know, collect comments from the Board of Finance and F&B and Education committees at their meeting, which is the same time. It's the only thing that sort of looks like an overlap.
Do you want to push your meeting to the following week or the week before?
Yeah, so they have a meeting on the 17th and the 24th. So if we moved it,
How about the 10th? Could we move our meeting to the 10th?
yeah, so they have 3 meetings, the 10th, the 14th, and the 17th. So
They don't get to call all the
Yeah.
Tuesdays.
Right, they kind of should know.
So just trying to sync up with their budget, right? They're going to release it on the 5th, which is a Thursday. Then they're going to talk about it on the 7th, which is a Saturday. And they're then calling for us to provide comments on the 10th. I think sort of 2 days is pretty quick. So maybe what we could do is we could move our meeting up to January 10th, right? Then we could sort of talk about any questions that we might have, and then Dan or I or whoever else was on, we could then attend their meeting on the 17th, where they've had a chance to talk about it a bit.
And provide guidance, provide our guidance,
Yeah.
or feedback.
Well, I think feedback, yeah. Guidance is.
Not guidance,
Yeah.
okay, that was the wrong word.
Is that the, I mean, do you wanna do it Thursday maybe and give a little more time, maybe not right after the Saturday session, is that
Well,
too quick?
well, no, I'd say we would just have our regular meeting on the 10th. And wouldn't be anything, and then we would be able to go to their meeting on the 14th.
Right, but you're saying we're gonna discuss it on the 10th, and that's only a few days after the Saturday session, or or not?
No, I'm just saying, I think we could move our meeting up to the 10th, and then we can go to their meeting on the 17th.
Yeah,
So
I
we
was
would
just saying the
have-
12th, maybe Thursday, just to give it a little bit more time, but that's, I mean, I don't care, if we're gonna stick with Tuesdays, and
We would have
Just
10
move
days
it.
from their Saturday meeting to
Yeah.
actually then meet with them, attend their meeting.
Yes.
but only 3 days to talk about, it, or like to get ready to talk about it.
So the real issue is this, they have 3 meetings, 10, 17, and 24. If we're gonna have it on one of the Tuesdays, we're obviously not gonna be able to attend their meeting and or give comments. So if we had to miss one,
Oh, could we
so to
do
feel like the
Thursday?
first one, which is only, 36 hours after we've kind of heard the whole budget proposal, is probably the one. I don't think we're going to be giving any material feedback within a couple days of hearing the budget.
No.
So then I think we can have our meeting on the 10th. We can, whoever's on the Board of Ed budget, we can all work to pull together questions and so forth that we have and and present them to them on the 17th.
So rather than reacting to their budget on the 10th,
Yeah.
we can organize how we're going to react to their budget on the 10th and react to their budget on the 17th.
Well, yeah, but I guess I would say we could have some discussion about it on the 10th, but we would have all the way up through, including the 17th, to kind of pull together and collect all of our questions and so forth. So,
I'm saying, why wouldn't we do our meeting on Thursday, the 12th? Because then you could even listen in to them, talk about it on the 12th. That
Yeah.
gives you, or on the 10th, and it gives you 2 more days.
so I guess, is there anything else going on in town on the, to Taylor's point, on the 12th, that Thursday?
Tough to say because most boards haven't published or finalized their calendar yet.
Yeah, there's nothing in
There's
there.
nothing there.
Okay, so we could go to, maybe, do you guys like that idea, do it Thursday, the 12th?
Fine with that.
Yeah,
Fine, yeah.
that works, yeah.
Jen, does that work for you, or,
Yep, that's fine.
I mean, the town hall's closed on Friday.
Yes. It's my Friday night, but I'll be here.
Okay,
Well, you go out on Tuesday.
so we're gonna change January 17th to January 10th?
I thought we were
Sorry,
gonna change
sorry,
to the
January
12th.
Which is a Thursday. Okay, but I'll also let the Board of Ed know that we're more likely to be at their meeting providing some comments on the 14th. sorry, the 17th, rather than the, okay. So can I have a motion to accept the meeting calendar as Jen proposed it, except for changing January 17th to January 12th? John moves. Dave seconds. All in favor? Unanimous. Okay. The third item is to discuss funding guidance for replacement of fire apparatus. And I talked with Jen about this, and this isn't necessarily funding decisions, if you are dollar decisions. This is more so the process by which the Board of Selectmen who ultimately decide if a fire truck or a piece of fire apparatus were to be moved forward into a budget, or whether it be on cycle or off cycle. It's really to give them some guidance in terms of how we would think about generally financing the acquisition of larger fire apparatus, whether it be bonding or just including it into either a budget cycle or just taking the money, just paying cash with funds on hand in the general fund.
Right.
And I think, as you know, when the Board of, and this is what this is really designed to do, is when the Board of Selectmen may choose to send a piece of fire apparatus forward, they need to, if it's going to be bonded, they then need to, at that time, pass a bonding resolution, so that when it comes to us, both the request and the bonding resolution are coming to us. Otherwise, if they pass, if they want to pass the acquisition of the fire apparatus onto us and we decide to bond it, we need to then prepare a bonding resolution and then send it back to them to be signed off. So I think in talking with Jen, I think the real mission for tonight is for us to think about effectively a threshold. Is there a certain dollar amount or type of fire apparatus where we're not locking in the policy, but we're giving them basically guidance? For example, if a fire apparatus is over $1 million, which is some of the larger fire trucks and so forth, then that's something that we would request, if the Board of Selectmen is going to approve a truck, that they send it to us with a bonding resolution. We can always at that time decide not to do it that way and take it out of the general fund, but at least it would come with a bonding resolution. We could conversely say, if you send fire apparatus to us that is, $500,000 or less, don't send it with a bonding resolution.
Sounds like you're identifying each decision based on each piece of apparatus. Does it make any sense to do it on a collective basis? I mean, you've got 3 trucks.
Oh, yeah. So if they're sending 3 trucks that are $500,000 each,
That's $1
would we
million.
want that to come with a bonding resolution versus if they're sending 1 truck? It's $1
So-
million.
In a year, you may get 5 separate requests, but depending on when the departments are ready to start bidding and preparing for the purchase, we might not get all 3 $500,000 requests at one time. We know that they're thinking of, we probably need one, we have their replacement plan, but the actual timing by the time they get ready and they have the capacity to prepare the bid specs and all of that can vary between the departments based on what their leadership has going on.
Well, then, Jen, is one possible reason to tell them that if you send any piece of fire apparatus to us that costs more than $1 million, we want it to come with a bonding resolution, or if you're sending a piece of fire apparatus to us and you reasonably expect that over the next 12 months, you've identified other trucks that are just sort of in process, you're not sending them to us yet, but in total, within the next 12 months, then just send that with a bonding resolution, provided it's that piece of equipment's over X, and the X could be $350,000.
Yeah, we could do something like that.
I mean,
So
to your point, looking at it in totality.
in what scenario would we decide to fund fire apparatus at any meaningful amount? Whether, I don't know what's the least expensive fire apparatus, $350,000? We're not talking about Suburbans, we're talking about,
No, but I think we've done some refurbishments in the past that were
Yeah.
less than 500. I'm thinking 400 or less.
so in that scenario, let's say the least expensive fire apparatus, aren't we likely to bond it? Hasn't that been, wasn't that the pivot we made when we decided to stop reserving for it? Was that we were likely to bond these trucks because they have a 20-year useful life?
I think we looked, I think the general consensus was that we would consider bonding the larger ones. You know, the question is, would we bond a refurbishment? I don't know if we'd bond
I don't know that the
a
refurbishment
$250,000
has the same-
overhaul.
I don't know if the refurbishment has the same useful life as a brand-new vehicle.
So I guess my bias would be if we're acquiring a new piece of fire apparatus, that we would likely decide to bond it. And the fact that we asked them to send us a bonding resolution doesn't bind us to bonding it, right? It just makes it a more efficient process if we do decide to bond it, because it doesn't have to go back. My recommendation would be if the Board of Selectmen is authorizing a new piece of fire apparatus, not a refurbishment, that it comes with a bonding resolution. And then if it's a refurbishment, then that's more on a case-by-case basis.
Are we anticipating that,
Again, it doesn't bind us to bonding it, but it just,
and to be clear, are we just worried about who does the work of creating a bonding resolution?
No, I think we're just making sure we don't have to then flip it back to them. Because
Right.
technically, I think best practice is if something's going to be bonded as part of acquiring some type of piece of capital, the Board of Selectmen should approve the capital and approve the bonding resolution, and then
I see.
we should be approving the resolution.
But is Dan right that we're not bound to that decision to bond it if it comes to the resolution?
Correct. So we could tell
So
them.
there's no risk in that.
We could tell them
That's
to
my point.
bond any new piece of fire apparatus, please send
Yeah.
it with a bonding resolution.
But-
Now, I think there should be some threshold.
No, but
You know,
the other
over-
thing is, like, how much foresight do we have on these? I mean, they're pretty slow-moving
Should be scheduled.
requests, right? Like, shouldn't they all be coming during budget
relatively
season?
scheduled.
Well, and part of budget season where you can put it in a capital budget and then say, we're gonna,
So our expectation is that it will be in the capital plan. You'll see in the out years, there's scheduled replacements. But they won't necessarily be ready to
Right.
move on it at
Right,
budget time.
Right, that's what we learned.
Right,
And
so
then-
I think, you can have the discussion, you can see what's coming down the pike and know, oh, we have 2 in this year, 3 in that year, none in this year. But I don't think we'd be ready for them to come to us and say they really know what they want, they really have a really solid estimate, and we're ready for appropriation and bond authorization. I don't think we can expect that to always coincide with the budget process.
And my impression, I think you just, with what you just said, is that by the time they come to the Board of Selectmen, to request the approval, and the Board of Selectmen would have to make a decision on approving it or the bonding resolution, they're effectively ready to go to bid at that point, right? So the risk is if it comes from the Board of Selectmen to us without the bonding resolution and we choose to then subsequently bond it, they lose a month or maybe 2, depending on the timing of the cycle, before they can go out to bid. So we're just trying to make it so that it goes through the process as quickly as possible, because they will be ready to bid when they first go to the Board of Selectmen.
Would you be comfortable with a threshold of $250,000?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should have some threshold, 250-ish, I think is fine. I guess, Jen, is there any material cost in preparing a bond resolution? I guess that would, is.
We have
Let's see.
we have to have bond counsel do it.
Yep.
Just in case there's any kind of changes in the required language. It doesn't incur much cost, and then when we actually go out and issue the bonds, that's when bond counsel submits their invoice for everything they've done since the last bond issue. So there's not a lot of cost. If one were to have been done and you decide you're gonna pay for it out of general fund reserve, it's not gonna be as significant.
And this,
impact.
this doesn't bind the Board of Selectmen to issue a bond resolution.
No.
This is us guiding them on what practice we'd like to see, but on the eve of a formal request, that's for $315,000. There's a bunch of conversation,
Yeah.
right? And so if that, in that instance, all right, we might be off guidance here, but we're going to not accompany this apparatus with a bonding resolution because people have talked and we've decided to fund it in some other fashion.
Yeah.
So this
So-
is
so-
just really just guidance.
Yeah, well, this is, yes, it can come with a bond resolution. We can say, no, we just want to pay cash at a general fund. But the idea is not to have to push it back, because sometimes we don't have the time to push it back before the next RTM meeting. And then if it sort of goes over another RTM meeting, you can end up losing sort of 4 weeks or so.
Right. And Kate and I were talking about this, we kind of had the quandary of, do we send it to you first to make the funding decision, but then are you stepping on Board of Selectmen's toes and their role on the policy decision of is it needed? And we didn't want to default to making a funding assumption
Yeah.
and then kind of stepping on your role. So
But could
if you provide the guidance, I think it will make it flow through with everybody's roles being as they should be.
Could we address it in a less formal way the meeting before, like 1 month before, and say, you know, given that the ballpark estimate is 750, would we like to see a bonding resolution? Should this be approved? Or is that too?
The problem is we won't have necessarily heard their whole conversation.
Right.
I think if we have a level, if we say it's more than, say, $250,000 for some type of.
Did you say 350 or
250 or 350?
I just didn't hear what you said.
Yeah, but let's just say 250.
Okay.
Then we would ask for it to come with a bonding resolution.
Yeah, and I
Unless
really do
otherwise
think most of
instructed.
them are going to be new purchases
Yeah.
north
Right.
of $1 million.
Yeah.
So it can come with it, and then we can look at the time of year where we are with respect to everything from close out of the capital accounts
Yeah.
to other projects.
Because depending on when we're closing our capital accounts, we may be turning up enough cash to
Yeah.
cover much of it.
And I think we will, the process with the fire trucks are generally that the Board of Selectmen, the fire department generally makes a decision that they need to move forward with something. They have a discussion with town staff and or the Board of Selectmen, and they put together a sort of short form set of specs. And then when they know that there's support from the Board of Selectmen to kind of move forward, then they go out through what is a multi-month process and working with a manufacturer to put together sort of a full 100-page set of specs, like right down to the fuses and tires and everything. And that's a considerable amount of work. So they generally don't do that work, that second level of detail, unless they have, I think, general support and guidance from staff and from Board of Selectmen.
And I think they also, before they get into that in-depth set of specs, they need to know, are they, appropriated $1 million or $1.5 million? Because that's really going to change what they can include in their specs.
Okay.
All right, so new acquisition greater than 250,000, the assumption is bonding, and we'll send it through with a resolution.
Perfect.
Do we need to vote or no?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just
Yeah.
guidance.
Yeah, this is just guidance, not a formal policy. We can change it at any time. Okay, next item is the financial report.
On the revenue, first of all, general fund is going very well. Property taxes, collections have been as expected. Investment income, I think Joan Hendrickson, our treasurer, had emailed all of you her portfolio report back in September, maybe, the end of September, with some explanation around it. But she's really been keeping an eye on the investment income number because rates are much higher than when we set the budget. So she's kind of projecting almost on a daily basis. And right now, her best estimate is that our investment income, assuming rates remain where they are, would be about $700,000 to $1 million for the year. We only budgeted $71,000. So we're expecting, right now, it looks like, maybe a $600,000 to $900,000 positive variance in investment income. She's going to keep looking at it, make sure that she keeps us updated on it, but that's going to be, she's already made budget in 2 months, so we know that we're going to have a positive variance, but it has the potential to be very significant.
Does she have a performance bonus?
No, she does not.
Watch out, Dan, she'll ask for one.
So that's definitely a positive one that we're keeping an eye on. On the flip side, I am keeping an eye on town clerk revenue. Definitely the volume of real estate transactions that drove all of their high revenue in the last couple of years is dropping off. My note is wrong, except for theirs, it was September 22 revenue is about 76% of the September 2021 revenue. August, I think, was like 50% of the prior year. So we're definitely seeing a decline, but they did bring in 3 million last year, and we put their budget at 1.8 this year. So I expect we won't be too far off from that, unless something really drastic happens.
Jen, on the other revenues, when it, as it relates to investment income, just because that is a big component there, when you're looking at year-to-date collected, does that only include revenue that's actually been paid to our account in an interest-earning account? So, for
Yes.
example, like the treasuries, or the T-bills that she bought, we've had for like a month now, that month of accrued interest on that.
We don't record it that way.
Until, so with the T-bills, until she actually gets, until they mature or we sell them,
Right.
that's when we'll,
You get a little bit of a spike.
yeah.
Yep. That's really all that is of note on the revenue side. On the expenditure side, everything is tracking as we would expect for this time of the year.
And Jen, just back to that investment income. When we think about budgeting this going forward, you know, if there's going to be greater, because like Stiff pays monthly, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever, and these CDs and other things, the deposit accounts all pay monthly. If we're going to start using more,
Longer term.
yeah, more longer term like T-bills, things that don't actually pay, or T-bills pay interest semi-annually, or just the T-bills at maturity. Just give some thought to how would we actually reflect that in the budget? Because if we said we have $20 million and we're going to earn 4%, like that's a number. But if, from a cash flow perspective, if she's staggering the maturities and the maturity doesn't technically happen in a fiscal year, you know, she has a bunch of maturities that mature on January 1st, 2024. That money wouldn't actually come in during the budget,
Well,
would it?
January 1st, yeah.
Check.
But, so with CDs, we're able to record the revenue each month as accrued interest. The
But
T-bills.
they don't pay monthly, do they?
No.
They pay at maturity.
At maturity, we actually can fully recognize it. The T-bills, what Joan has thought about is, so these mature, I think, February. And then what she's thinking is then do 4-month T-bills, and that will get us onto a good fiscal year so that we can really record the revenue in a fiscal year. We're not gonna be crossing fiscal years with it.
But-
And that'll help her with her budgeting.
But I guess my only concern is as we get into February, March, April, May, and June, in that case, she'd only be buying 5-month and 4-month and 3-month and 2-month and 1-month T-bills. And I'd hate for her to buy, oh, sorry, not hate, it might not be optimal to buy a 1-month T-bill on June 1st, just so it can mature in June 30th.
No.
If the real decision is if the better decisions go out 6 months and get some more term. So I'm just wondering like how,
She'll have to adjust for that in her budget when she puts her budget together, she'll see where the rates are. It'll be her best estimate
Yeah.
of where they're gonna go. And then what she thinks the sweet spot is on terms, and she knows that, we won't recognize it until it matures, so if it crosses a fiscal year in her budget calculation, she'll have to put the interest in the next fiscal year. So
And if the-
she'll have to
It's
factor
almost-
that into
it's
her
almost two
budget
different-
calculation.
It's almost like two columns. You
Yeah.
got 23 and 24.
Right, when is it actually
And
gonna
when it
hit?
matures, that's when it goes in.
Well,
I
you
don't
got,
think
you got
it's-
the cash versus the accrual concept, and
Yep.
there's also the idea that the bulk of the portfolio is not going to be enrolling T-bills, right?
Yes.
So it would be a small portion of the investment portfolio that might affect, so it won't, it will have some cash flow effect, but it should not be a material cash flow effect in terms of affecting operations.
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
But just from a theory standpoint, I mean, if the intent is to hold these securities until maturity, and there certainly is very little, well, maybe there's increasing probability of default, but for the most part, they won't default over the period that they're held. Why not accrue it? What prevents you from accruing the interest?
Well, from the balance sheet perspective, like to the audit, how does that work in the audit? I would assume that we, at year end, we show value of all securities, right?
You actually have to market them
Yeah.
every month.
So this is a new territory for our assistant finance director. So we've had him a couple months. She's working on how to make sure that we satisfy the auditors on how we record it, as well as, just making sure that it works for Joan's projection. It's giving her what she needs. But as of right now, it would just be the year that it matures is where Joan's going to drop it into her budget projection.
Okay.
Yeah, I
And
think-
she's trying to match it up with a fiscal year just for ease. But if
Yep.
the 6 month isn't the nice one and 3 month and then another 3 month, that's what she'll do. to
I
take
think the
advantage
two
of rates.
takeaways, Jen, for me, is what David said. I think it's a smaller part of the portfolio. That's right. And to Jim's point a little bit, I don't think budgetary seasons, if you want to call it, should drive policy on this,
Right.
right? Like
Yeah.
if we think the 1 year is getting 348 and
Right.
the 4 month is a lot less, and we're just trying to stick in 4 months. tell
Which
Joan-
is exactly
tell
what
Joan
Joan
to-
does
yeah,
with
yeah,
CDs and,
But that's
the
why
driving
the accrual
force
method
isn't
solves
June
it.
30th.
Yeah,
Right.
correct.
And doesn't she keep the bulk of the money in deposits anyway? Like,
Yeah.
I think she's keeping
Yeah,
most of it liquid.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think we're talking about a lot
Minimal.
smaller
Really small.
part than, once
I
again,
think
back
there's
to
2
Dave.
million in
Yeah.
T-bills right now,
Yeah.
right? Out
Yeah.
of a total 26 or 27, right?
Yeah.
So just, I guess, just something to keep an eye on, right? If
Yeah.
if that grows.
Yeah.
So on this, right now, investment income is just in other revenues because budgetarily it was $71,000. Do you want to see it broken out as its own line so that we can see what it's doing throughout the year?
Sure.
Yeah, especially,
It's not-
especially given the size of the potential variation we're gonna see this year.
Yeah, I think we probably buried it in there for the last 14 years.
Yeah,
because
because it's been
Because
minimal.
it's been .02.
Yeah.
All right, so starting next month, you'll see that broken out so we can see exactly what it's doing. Um, Other things I wanted to draw your attention to, there's really nothing of note on state revenues on page 4. Money hasn't started coming in really for that. We've gotten our first town aid road, but that's it. We should see the first educational cost sharing in October, and we should be getting our tiered pilot. That was supposed to be by the end of September, but it didn't actually come in. Sewer and parking funds, they're both in their big collection periods with the sewer service charges and the permit renewals. On page 8, active bonded projects. I need to start pulling together my thoughts on our next bond issue for our active projects and see what kind of timing we can come up with. If possible, I'd love to have it coincide with Great Island so that we only go out once and don't incur additional issuance costs. But we may not be able to do that just based on where Great Island ends up in the calendar and when we are going to be required to bond based on when we've spent on some of these things. But in the next couple months, I'll be coming to you because we will need to do another bond issue. Holmes roof and skylight and Hindley roof replacement. Holmes is complete. The final total is $793,000. I've asked Board of Ed to confirm the state grant estimate of $70,000 that was provided a while ago. But we borrowed a full $1,020,000, so we have unused bond proceeds that we can transfer to another active project. And same with Hindley, that'll be complete in the next week or two. We borrowed $400,000, but we'll probably, if we get the $29,000 state grant, we'll probably have about $60,000 left to transfer over. So right now, what I'm thinking is that we move those to HHR, because that's gotten up and running a little bit. That's our most active other Board of Ed bonded project. But I'll firm those up with Board of Ed, what their state reimbursement estimates are, and I'll bring a transfer to you to move the unused bond proceeds.
And while you're on that, there's also the Royal Roof project here. That project hasn't been done yet, but we expect will likely get rolled into HHR.
Right, so we'll
So
have
how
to
does that-
rescind that after you seek an amended appropriation for HHR. We wouldn't want to rescind it beforehand, just
In case.
if for some
Yeah.
reason it didn't get
Okay.
adjusted. But we would go back and we would rescind
Okay,
that one.
perfect.
And then on ARPA, we have received our final allocation, so we've received the full 6.4 million. And little by little, we're spending that money. And I did add at the bottom of page 14, our ARPA deadlines. Funds have to be obligated by December 31, 2024, and expended by December 31, 2026.
Got a long way to go.
Yes.
I mean, is there a realistic, like, plan in place to get that done?
Yeah, we've appropriated most of the funds. A lot of them are in larger public works projects. But I think we're almost getting to the point where we can go through and do, when some of these smaller one-off purchases are done, we can go through and clean those balances up, move them back into contingency. Just picking up the scraps of the overs and unders.
And if on 12/31/24 or 26, we have positive contingency, we haven't spent the dollars, what happens? Do we have to return them to the treasury?
I would assume so.
Can we reallocate them prior to those deadlines?
Yes.
So we ought to track that number as we're getting closer to those
Yep.
deadlines and make sure that we're using the money
Exactly.
rather than having to return it.
Yep.
Okay.
Jen, to the bonding, page 11, purchase of Great Island.
Mm-hmm.
Is that 24 million just a holdover from homes above it?
Oh, yeah. Yes, it absolutely
Either that or we got a
is.
big discount.
We would like to get it at that price.
So you can tell that I copied and pasted, huh?
And the 1105, we didn't spend, there hasn't been that much, has there?
Yeah, we had to make the $1 million earnest deposit.
Got it. Okay. And then, so it's really 105,000 is what we
Regular
spent
expense,
in
yeah.
terms of other stuff, environmental and so
Yep.
forth. Okay. Okay, any other questions on the financial report? Nope. Okay. Next item is the September 30th minutes. This is the second version of our new and improved and simplified minutes.
No comments, it's very clean.
Yes. Dan and Taylor were absent, but as you know, if you think they're accurate, you can still vote on it. So do I have a motion to approve the Board of Finance regular meeting minutes from September 20th, 2022? Rob moves. Dave seconds. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Okay. Okay, special assignments. Rob, technology?
Technology, so we've broken technology, the IT steering committee, into 4 groups. Issue resolution, efficiency, citizen service, and outsourcing. I'll pass it around just to the group here, what each one does. We're meeting again on Thursday. Is anybody we're keeping minutes, right?
Yes.
Okay, because I know we're all meeting, like, it's kind of running 2 trains on this, right? Like, I'm on the everybody has a place on one of the committees. So if you're on the steering committee in general, there's a steering committee meeting, then there's subcommittees underneath it. And I know we've been kind of bumpy a little bit in our meeting schedule. small group, like 3 or 4 of us, when somebody goes or can't make it, kind of slows things down a little bit. Are we doing a summarization all the way to the top? I asked John for this list, but I didn't see anything else. Does that make any sense, what I'm asking? Like, tracking, like, we're meeting on Thursday, I believe?
I think it got moved to the 27th.
Oh, that one got moved to 27 too?
I think
Okay,
so.
so my subcommittee's meeting on Thursday, okay. But on the 27th, I think one of the things we should talk about as a team, the entire steering committee is a kind of a roll-up, right? Of kind of where everybody else is. And I think when we do that, then the next meeting, we will have a kind of a roll-up for each group. But in the meantime, I'll send what John sent to me so you can kind of see how we're breaking down the IT steering committee and members of each one. Did I miss anything?
No, I don't think so.
And I think I said, I don't think I have anything on audit unless you have any, or if you guys have anything to add, I think we're just kind of.
No,
Yeah,
it's taken a little longer to hand over the GASB lease information than what I anticipated. So I think I bogged them down a little bit, but they're moving forward. As of right now, I don't think we have any outstanding items with them. I'm not sure if the Board of Education does. So hopefully we will have a report late November, have our draft. But it may be a little bit later than usual. I think overall, most of the towns are a little bit behind schedule from prior years because of the
Because of
GASB
the leases.
implementation.
How many did we have, or how many did you have to present? Because I'm assuming it's everything and everything, right?
It's
in
not
town.
that many, but it was very odd because we actually are lessor on a land lease for Clock Hill Homes, and it's a 99-year lease. And the escalator is CPI, so we had to schedule out expected payments and then present value them back for 70 odd more years.
What's your discount rate over 70 years?
Yeah.
We used our most recent bond rate. Reasonable estimate of what it would cost us to borrow money, so that's what we've decided to use as our discount rate. It was a little challenging, just some little quirks. If there is a renewal option, you have to then include the renewal period as well, even if you have no intention of renewing.
Yep.
So we had a
Anything
couple.
discounted over 71 plus years is not going to add much.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I think a lot of towns had used outside consultants, which were $10,000 or more. Part of me wishes that I had, but at the same time, I feel like the struggle to set up the template means that we won't be needing to go out on a continuing basis. It was just a struggle to get it set up the first time. But in all honesty, I am expecting some kind of a finding on our control processes related to leases, because we just haven't thought about them this way in the past. So that's something that I'm expecting they'll ding us with, and then we'll just work on tightening up those processes to align with that requirement.
So when they made these new requirements, that $10,000 worked in perfect, just like they wanted it to.
Yeah.
Sorry, being cynical for a second.
HHR?
HHR, there's a lot of stuff going on. The committee has met and approved the schematic design for the 3 schools. That schematic design was subsequently presented to the Board of Ed, which approved it as well. There are 2 elements of that said design that are still sort of in process, if you will. There are a couple members of the committee that have expertise in heating and ventilation, commercial heating and ventilation stuff. So it was felt that one of them felt very strongly that the systems that were proposed were overly redundant, and because of such were too expensive for what they could have been. So there's an MEP subcommittee that's evaluating that. They were supposed to have met today, and we expect to have their findings tomorrow. But the schematic designs were approved subject to the MEP committee coming to some resolution on that. The second issue was, it was always part of the committee's charge to evaluate the use of the Curtis property at Holmes. The committee decided that we wanted to use it for a variety of reasons. They're trying to create 85 parking spaces at each school. That provided some excess space. But more importantly, the primary reasons is for construction staging area, and it allows access to the back of the school on that side of the building, because the only other access to the back of the school where the bulk of the construction is going to occur would be to go through the same area where the bus loop is. And that would represent material problems in terms of managing the flow of construction vehicles versus buses and kids and those kinds of things. So that was part of the decision process for the committee. Since then, there is a group of concerned neighbors that have raised some significant concerns. Their concerns have to do with, they believe that the use of the property will provide minimal utility. They're concerned about environmental issues with stormwater runoff and the cutting down of trees and those types of things. They've indicated that there's a pathway that cuts through the Curtis property that many of the children use to traverse to the school. So they're concerned about safety of kids that want to traverse to school from Lake Avenue through that way. And last but not least, the way that topographically, the way that it would sit, that lot would sit physically below the other existing parking lot. So for visibility from homes from Hoyt Street, anyone cruising by may not be able to see down into that lot, and they're concerned that that would create an opportunity for nefarious activity. So tomorrow night at our meeting, the architects are going to attempt to address those things. They've also been charged with evaluating alternatives, ways to ameliorate some of the residents' concerns, and whether or not there's a different way to approach it as opposed to using that property. So we're sort of revisiting all of that. The crux of the matter is we have to get it all done very fast, because if we're going to include that in the scope of the project for potential grant money from the state, we need the official word from the state is December 1st. We're in discussions with them about whether we can have a little leeway for a little bit later in December. But that will all be coming. I have an estimated timeline for things. And there will be an appropriation related to that they will have to come before us for. The exact dollar amounts being hashed out because we're using estimators from the construction management firm and estimators that the architects hired, and the discrepancy was too large to let it go forward as is. We've asked them to get the two of them in the room together and let them reconcile it for us. So that should be underway. Hopefully, maybe we'll have a number by tomorrow night. The other issue that has come up that we have voted to move forward on, and the Board of Ed is on board with this, is, we've done partial roof replacements at Holmes and Hindley, but the rest of the roofs that are on those buildings are currently 16 years old, and they have an estimated replacement cycle of 20 years. So the project, the way it's laid out, is we'd be putting all of the HVAC equipment on the roof, and there is intent to put solar panels, solar arrays on the roofs. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to go forward with the project, conclude our project, and then a year or two later have to take all that stuff off the roof again in order to be able to do the roof. The Board of Ed, the administration already has those projects in their capital plan, and they have accrued some funds. I think the number, the last I heard, was around $850,000. But we are anticipating incorporating that into our project and getting it done. We're waiting on the construction manager and architect to finalize the expected plan of what is going to get done. But you can easily expect that to be done either the first or the second summer. It's not really something that you can do with the kids in the building, because ripping the roof off the building at a time when a kid is in the classroom right below just doesn't work. So those things are underway. The discrepancy between the architect's estimator and the construction manager's estimator was larger for that portion of the project. But in aggregate, you're probably looking at something a little over $4 million between the two of them. But we'll have to see where the finals come in. We're hopeful that there might be a little bit of saving on the HVAC and heating systems. We'll have to see where the MEP committee comes in. So we have another meeting tomorrow night, which I've mentioned. That meeting is virtual for anybody that's listening. It's on GoToMeeting, so you can log in to GoToMeeting. There's also a phone number that you can get. If you can't find it, feel free to contact me or any of the other committee members, and we'll get it to you so you can participate. Right now, the tentative deadlines are to go before the Board of Selectmen on November the 7th to request care and custody of the Curtis property on behalf of the Board of Ed. They've already approved to ask for it, but it has to go before the Board of Selectmen to request that property. The next deadline would be to come before the Board of Finance on the 14th of November, and that would be with the appropriation dollar amounts for both of those projects. Rules Committee for the RTM on the 21st, and I have question marks written down for the RTM because we didn't have a hard day for that one yet.
It seems like they're going to be, I'll talk about some other stuff in my remarks, but they're going to have a meeting they're going to conduct some business on this after the state of the town or before the state of the town on that December 5th date.
Yeah, that's what's been talked about, and I'm just not sure where the final discussions are there about getting that done, because that's their whole organization meeting and all that stuff, right? So we'll have to see. But the idea is to try to get it done. We're shooting to have it, to be able to submit it to the state 12/1, or at least that week, if the state will give us 7 more days to get it in, because we clearly, any incremental costs that we can roll into the project for potential reimbursement, however much it may or may not be, we'd like to at least get it submitted into that.
Looks like care and custody is being discussed at tomorrow's meeting. I accidentally opened their agenda before ours.
Is it?
Yeah, or maybe tonight, actually. Is that possible?
Their meeting was this morning, wasn't it?
Was it this morning? It's on the agenda for the 18th, which is today, actually.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't tune in this morning, so I don't know, because that's the quarterly department heads meeting, so, and, yeah.
Well, the appropriation will still need to go to Board of
Yeah, so-
Selectmen on the 7th.
Yeah, the appropriation has to get done too?
Yeah, appropriation and bonding resolution will have to go to Board of
Oh,
Selectmen.
okay. Well, yeah.
I can report briefly on I served as representative on the Board of Ed's negotiation with the Darien Education Association's 3-year contract. On Friday night, on Friday at 4 o'clock, we began a 11.5-hour mediation session with the Board of Ed and the union, and at 3:30 in the morning, an agreement was reached. And so that agreement now, it's not public yet. It'll be submitted to all sort of 500 members of the Darien Union for their ratification. And then after that happens, the Board of Ed will bring it forward to and vote on it. And I think that should all happen over the next sort of 4 to 6 weeks. And those numbers will all be baked in, obviously, to the budget that were presented on January 5th.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Sounds awful.
On
Yeah.
behalf of all of us.
Yeah, it was, hadn't been up to 1:30 for a while, but it was, or 3:30 for a while, but it was,
Back to the college days.
yeah.
But it sounds like it could
Yeah,
have been an
except
arbitration situation.
in college there was
Yeah.
alcohol involved.
Correct.
I'm sure there was here too.
A road trip.
So they did avoid having an arbitration, so.
Good, that's great.
At the last meeting, David gave a good update on Oxbridge in my absence, and there's really nothing new to report there. The old building, the kids were in school until the academic wing opened, has been demolished, and so that part of the project is up and running.
Okay.
Were they able to get rid of the contaminated debris?
Yes.
And I will simply reiterate again, the inside of that building is awesome.
Yeah, I was gonna, yes. I wanted to use that, but you own that quote for that.
And Paul, anything on pensions?
No, we had a meeting and the performance was not as you would expect it, but it's better than the market in general.
Okay. Well, I'll keep the chairman's reports brief, but just to give everyone a heads up, on our next meeting, which is November 14th, the Board of Ed is going to be coming to us with sort of two off-cycle appropriations, one for capital and one for operating expenses. They're both related to security items. The capital is about $335,000, I think it is approximately, and it's to install sensors that'll be able to determine if doors are unlocked or locked and so forth throughout all the different schools, similar to what they've done. I think it'll be similar to what they've done at Oxford, I think, in terms of as part of that. The second one will be a $295,000 operating budget special appropriation for them to hire 6 SSOs, which are school security officers, which are slightly different than a SRO, different more so in name than actual function and so forth, and a director of security. So they'll be in front of us to talk about that appropriation. I would encourage everyone to watch the September 26th Board of Ed, 27th Board of Ed meeting.
Yeah.
There's about an hour of discussion there, which I think is very helpful for everyone to listen to. They talk about where, the overall cost, the difference in what an SSO is versus an SRO, which is an active duty police officer. An SSO is it's just a retired police officer, and the pension and other benefit costs are much lower just because it's a retired police officer. And they talk about the director of security, as well as some information related to sort of how things such as crossing guards and so forth will all be integrated into that. I'd also listen to the comments, the public comment, both at the beginning and the end of that meeting, as well as last Tuesday's meeting where they actually, where they approved and sent this forward to us. So I'll have, for that meeting, I'll probably have Dr. Adley, Duke, and Rich come to sort of talk about some of the overall expenses, because this is obviously, if they hire them, they're not going to be part of the union or anything, but it will be sort of an ongoing cost.
And the job descriptions were actually in the package for that meeting they had on the 27th, so if you want to actually see the written job description, that's available in that package as well. And Jim, do you remember, I didn't remember hearing this, but the police have been having trouble recruiting people. Has there been any discussion on their expectations about the ability to fill?
So I think, so as it relates to our police department, I believe Chief Anderson reported that they're actually at the full staff right now. I think they were able to source the last 4, so I want to say we're at, I think, 48 sworn officers.
Yep.
So that is good. I think as it relates to sourcing the SSOs, Chief Anderson indicated he would be very involved in that and sort of finding these sort of retired police officers that have the right type of training and background for these roles. So that's good news there.
Well, we've certainly had a couple retire from our police force recently, so.
Yep. So that, I think, so in connection with inviting, again, Alan and Duke and others come to our meeting, one of the things we could do is we could have a few of them come earlier in that meeting if we wanted to get an update in the executive session regarding the union contract. I'd probably ask Duke, Sini, Dave Brown, and Sarah Parent, who are the 4 members of that committee, to probably give us an update on, just so you guys know where that is as we're thinking about sort of budget guidance and so forth. It's probably good for us to be aware of that, but since it's not yet ratified and or approved, we'd have to do that in the executive session. But I do think it'd be good for you to hear from the 4 of them who were actively involved in this.
Could we add an SSO portion to the executive session so that we have a chance to ask questions that may not be appropriately asked publicly?
Yeah. So we will warn an executive session for both of those topics. You get an update on union contracts, which I know is permitted underneath the FOI code as well as security.
Were they not originally planning to come tonight? Is this delaying?
No, so they passed it last Tuesday. The problem was that they didn't actually send the request until Monday. And we had already put out our agenda on Thursday. And since their plan is to bring it to the RTM on December 5th, so our November 14th meeting gives us plenty of time to be, to approve it at that meeting and be ahead of the rules meeting on the 21st and the RTM meeting on December 5th. I guess, the school, Alan and Duke didn't see a way to get it in front of the RTM before the 5th, just given the way that, the election occurs, and they have a meeting on the 14th, which is organizational, on the 28th, where they sort of are actually assigned committees after the role meeting on the 21st and so forth, so they're doing it on the 5th. I did ask him in terms of going forward with this, because the board voted on this unanimously. They do, the run rate, the annual run rate costs about $500,000 for the project. And given that they're not planning to have the SSOs start until January 1, it's basically, they're only asking for $295,000, which is approximately half of the operating cost, plus some of the equipment cost and so forth, things like the
Weapons.
tasers and weapons and handcuffs, other stuff like that. So they're only coming for $295,000. I had asked them about, they do have a surplus now, net of the change in the ECR grant. If you recall, the state changed the way that the ECR reimbursements work, where Darien, because we're ranked in the top percentage, our percentage reimbursement went down significantly. So after that, which hit us for about $136,000, and then you may have noticed they recently approved a new director of mental health for $175,000. So after those two things, they still have about a $315,000 surplus, but I think they wanted to come to the Board of Finance and RTM ultimately for a special appropriation.
Because they couldn't get them implemented faster if they used their surplus and just got it done? Are they hiring the mental health professional like this week, next week, or are they waiting until January?
At the last meeting, they approved the actual job description. They technically didn't make the transfer yet, but I think they're going to wait and make that transfer until they actually hire it. But I think Dr. Adley's out actively looking for that person now, or at least as of a week ago. We're still looking for it. But yeah, they could have done it with it, but I think, I don't know, we'll see. We'll get an update in terms of where they are on the surplus, but I think they wanted to go this way, which would mean if the RTM approves it on December 5th, it's a 10-day waiting period, so really December 15th is when that appropriation would become, right, Jen? I think that would become active, and so that would give
But
them...
if they use surplus, they could potentially get that person on the ground in November, right?
Yeah. But, so I'll have them come to talk about both of those things on the 14th, so that's it. Any other new, and so the reason we didn't add it and didn't have them come here tonight to discuss it was I just felt, there's a lot of talk about sort of transparency about making those decisions, and I felt like, or at least my position was, if we had just made a special vote to add it to the agenda quickly without sort of warning the public on something where I think the public may have comments on, it would sort of probably wasn't the best practice. So I thought, moving it to the 14th, we'll warn it, and the Board of Ed will let folks know at their next meeting that we're going to discuss it on the 14th in case people do public comment, and it won't slow it down based on their December 5th target. Okay. Any other business?
When is the date of the state of the town?
December 5th.
Thank you.
And again, we'll have to figure out how that meeting's going to work, because obviously all board chairs give presentations, but they're going to have a fair amount of business I think they're going to be conducting. So I think they're also dealing with, do they deal with the ADUs yet or no?
What?
Did the RTM deal with the ADU vote yet?
Yes, I think they did. I think they did.
Okay. Well, I think they're going to have a couple things, so we'll figure out how long that'll take, whether that'll go after the speeches or before. Okay.
Yep.
Motion to adjourn? Rob moves. Dave seconds. All those in favor? All those in favor? Unanimous. 8:52.